Today we're going to talk about the guy who doesn't need introduction, as Saul Canelo Alvarez is the most popular and famous boxer of the last 5 years. A belligerent Mexican has been in the top 5 pound-for-pound rankings for several years now and was even at the top until recently, not letting anyone doubt his greatness. But how did the son of a Mexican farmer manage to become the highest paid boxer of modern time? Or maybe Canelo's hype is fake and he doesn't deserve universal recognition? After watching this video, you might give the necessary answers yourself, as today I will tell you about an incredibly long journey of Saul Alvarez in the professional sport. Please don't forget about the likes, comments with 4 words and subscribe to the channel. Here we go! Childhood and youth. Saul was born in Guadalajara, where his family moved from Los Reyes prior to the birth of Álvarez Jr. By the way, the future champion was the last, 8th child in the family. Saul worked with his entire family on the farm almost from infancy. I would help my dad make the popsicles and the shaved ice to help supply the pallet area. I'd also go around on the truck selling popsicles. I feel proud of that because it taught me to work hard. It taught me to be responsible from a young age. I started helping my dad when I was 5 years old. At 7 years old, I started to get on the trucks to sell the popsicles. The boy got to know boxing following the example of his older brothers, every one of which performed and continues to perform as professionals. Watching how the young brothers train and prepare for competitions on a daily basis, younger Alvarez also wanted to get in the ring. He had his first amateur fight at just 11 years of age. I remember that I was about 11 years old. I've been training with my oldest brother, Rigoberto, for about a week, and he brought me to fight an amateur fight. As always, in your first fight, you get a draw. If you win or lose, you always get a draw so that you don't lose the will to keep training. Amateur career. Already back when Saul was fighting under the nickname of Canelo, which accompanied him since childhood. Atypical for Mexicans, the champion always had red hair and freckles that he got from his mother. Because of the hair color, the boy was called Canelo, which literally means cinnamon. After just a couple of amateur fights, people began to talk about Alvarez Jr. while the opponents didn't want to face him, so the guy couldn't perform at such a level for too long. At the moment of moving to professionals, Saul's record was 44-2, and a remarkable achievement was him winning a silver medal at the Junior Mexican National Championships.
What about your first pro fight?
I actually remember that fight really well. I was really excited, really happy, because I was hardly getting fights anymore in the amateurs. No one wanted to fight against me, and Chepo told me to get ready because I was going to debut as a professional in a month. I was really excited. Professional career. Professional debut happened in 2005 when Saul was only 15. Due to being a minor, up until turning 18, he fought exclusively in Mexico, and his coaches were Jose and his son Eddie Reynoso. Prior to that, currently famous Eddie coached Canelo's older brothers, but as he spotted the talent in a young prodigy, he began to train him as well. A bit more than a year and a half later, since the beginning of his career, Alvarez officially had 13 fights, in 11 of which he scored finishes. On top of that, Jose Reynoso claimed that during the same period of time, Saul got 10 more victories via knockouts. However, we have no archival photos or videos to confirm this information. At that time, Alvarez fought in the lightweight division and had 2 fights with the future world champion Miguel Vazquez. Perhaps we could have seen a trilogy one day, but they went their separate ways as the Mexican moved to the welterweight division. By the beginning of 2009, the record of a talented guy was 24-0, and he was having title fights definitely not for the first time. Sure, like the previous ones, it wasn't the belt of one of the major organizations. The NABF title was at stake, but it was a rather decent achievement for a 19-year-old. The opponent happened to be his countryman Antonio Fitch, and Alvarez dispatched him already in the first round, landing a couple of already terrifying right hands. In the next 3 fights, the Mexican successfully defended his title and after that signed a contract to fight Murat Kuziv, who had a record of 18-4. The winner would get not the most prestigious WBC youth welterweight title. The Russian was brought over as a sacrificial lamb and he executed his role perfectly. In the first round, Canelo easily kept him at the end of his jab and landed a couple of big right straights. Murat held a high guard, but it was purely nominal. Young Saul pierced through it at will whenever he wanted. It was all over in the second round when Canelo shut the poor guy down with an explosive 4-punch combination. Sure, one could scold young Alvarez for fighting cans. However, one should not forget that at the time he wasn't even 20 years old, while having an astronomical frequency of performances. Already a month after the knockdown win, he entered the ring once again, this time against some Carlos Leonardo Herrera, the Argentinian boxer who, like Saul, mostly boxed his countrymen at home arenas. Short-haired young Alvarez reminds me of typical school bullies from sitcoms of the 90s and 2000s, but contrary to them, the guy really could fight. Floating around the ring and working as a second number, Canelo suddenly attacked and slayed the opponent with a right cross. A deep knockout from the Mexican prodigy. Taking a break for a couple of months, Alvarez appeared on the arenas of Mexico once again, this time to decapitate Leonardo Taina, the American with a record of 21-2, who also was at the beginning of his journey. Whether the main star of the evening wasn't motivated enough or the opponent happened to be tough, but the finish ultimately didn't happen for all 36 minutes of the fight. Overall, the fight was good, even dynamic one could say. Canelo mostly worked as the second number, countering his opponent on the movement and also masterfully attacking at close range. Everything in the best traditions of the great predecessors. Though Leonardo applied pressure, he couldn't land even a couple of shots, so in the end of all rounds, his victory was entirely out of the question.
Saul Canelo Alvarez.
Canelo had his last career fight in the welterweight division in the spring of 2010, 3 months after the win over Taina. This time it was young Brian Kamichis who got thrown into the furnace of an accelerating hype train, who also only fought for secondary class titles. The first 3 minutes were relatively measured, and the most significant moment was an accurate punch from Saul, after which Brian got a bit wobbled. The Mexican did not develop the success, and in the second round threw a dangerous combination of leading uppercut straight and scored a knockdown. Though he recovered, Camichas couldn't get his confidence back and got hit with a bat. Right hand of Canelo. To survive, the contender tied an aggressive opponent and he managed to make it to the bell. However, Alvarez couldn't be stopped, and in the third round, he scored a knockout with a left hook. And here is the first fight where Canelo faced a man with experience fighting for the belts of the major organizations. This boxer was Miguel Cotto. And no, I'm not talking about the legendary Miguel Angel, but about his not the most famous brother, Jose Cotto. 3 years prior to this fight, the Puerto Rican fought for the WBA lightweight title twice, but lost the first bout and got a draw in the second one. In case of a win over an actively promoted Mexican, he would get the chance to come out of the shadow of his older brother. By the way, this happened to be Canelo's third fight in the USA, and the guys were supposed to clash on the undercard of Floyd Mayweather and Shane Mosley. In the first round, the world almost witnessed an upset. Cotto suddenly exploded and stunned Paul with a left, and then added a couple of powerful straight hands that the Mexican barely took. If Canelo made the same mistake in the fight with Cotto Sr., we would have likely seen a vicious finish. But luckily, it was Jose who couldn't finish the job and sentenced himself to a defeat. Alvarez picked up the pace and ran over an experienced opponent with heavy punches, and even scored a knockdown in the second round.
Counter right hand up and under from Alvarez, and Cotto's glove touched the canvas, and Alvarez has just evened up.
The Puerto Rican shots did not have as much of an impact compared to Saul's powerful blow, and in the 9th round, there were so many of them that the referee had to stop the fight.
And Tony Weeks is going to stop it right there. They were just above us, and you could see Tony Weeks.
Alvarez and his team decided that it would be better to continue a career in the super welterweight division. So beginning from the next fight, he settled down in this weight class for a while. And by the way, who was the star's first fight in the new weight against? Saul's opponent happened to be Luciano Leonel Cuello, a decent Argentinian boxer who was recently fed to the Mexican star Chavez Jr. The fight was held in Mexico in Alvarez's home state. Boxers fought for the WBC silver title. As commentators like to say, on that night there was only one boxer in the ring. Every round was a torture for Luciano, and his executioner was tireless and consistently inflicted damage. For 6 minutes of the fight, the Argentinian went down twice, and in the third round he ate so many shots that he might have left the arena with a developing dementia. Alvarez relentlessly continued to stalk and batter his prey. In the 5th round, a vicious Mexican broke his opponent's body, scoring a third knockdown, and in the 6th one, the referee decided to spare Cuello and finally stop the fight. For such a vivid victory, a famous Mexican singer, Vicente Fernandez, who was at the arena that night, gifted young Alvarez with a horse. Of course, the gift was unusual, but only for those who don't know that Alvarez is a fan of riding. Apart from the racer, on that night, a young monster also won the title and soon was ready to defend it against Carlos Manuel Baldomir, a veteran with more than 60 fights, who in his time snatched the last titles from Arturo Gatti. After that, Tata had time to lose his titles to Floyd, and he was coming into the fight exclusively for Saul's belt. I know he is an opponent with a lot of experience, strong and able to take punishment. He is an opponent that has fought the best in the world, and for that very reason, I'm happy and motivated. In short, that fight could be described like this. If Baldomir was younger, he could have given Canelo a decent thrashing. The veteran was not afraid of Mexican power, and he wasn't inferior in terms of technique, However, the speed and reflexes let an old warrior down, making him eat a lot of unnecessary shots. Alvarez had success with his left and also managed to land great shots with his power hand, which won him the rounds. In the 6th round, all of a sudden, Carlos began to land shots to the body, and at a brief moment it seemed like he snatched the initiative. However, Canelo unloaded a hook and the Argentinian went down face first.
Knocks out the 39-year-old! He's not gonna get up!
A young champion showcased fantastic finishing abilities. 11 out of his last 12 fights resulted in stoppages. Sure, everyone wanted to see such a man with a belt of one of the major organizations, but Canelo hasn't beaten anyone yet, and that could have gotten him closer to the coveted dream. On the other hand, the guy had the world before him. 2 months after an exciting rivalry with Baldomir, Alvarez was planning to have his second title defense against another veteran in Lovemore Ndu, who once held the IBF Super Lightweight Championship. Honestly speaking, the fight resembled more of a tough sparring. For more than 30 minutes of the bout, neither of the guys wobbled one another, though both were known as powerful punchers. Canelo worked with the jab more than usual, and closer to the second half of the given time, entered the mode of explosion every 15 to 20 seconds. Many of his attacks sunk in the veteran's guard, while Ndu himself was not in a hurry to answer back and pressed the champion for only a couple of rounds in the entire fight, and only when the latter took an intentional break. Overall, almost every round was dictated by Alvarez, so scores like 119 to 109 were absolutely fair.
Saúl El Canelo Alvarez.
Remember when I told you that the Mexican had a long road ahead of him before fighting for the real belt? It appeared that the leadership of WBC, in the face of Mauricio Sulaiman, thought completely the opposite, and with no reason gave Alvarez an opportunity to fight for the vacant title against Ricky Hatton's brother and the European champion Matthew Hatton. In fact, one doesn't need to dig deep to find answers. After his father's retirement, Sulaiman took complete control over WBC, while also seeing a huge potential and boatloads of money in Canelo. It was a lot more beneficial for Sulaiman to conquer the entire Mexican market together with Saul than to play along with the rankings, so he easily made the youth the main contender, leaving behind the #1 ranked Jermell Charlo. Even Alvarez himself was a little bit shocked, which he spoke about in the fight promo produced by HBO. Honestly, I didn't think it would happen so fast. This time, Alvarez fought a lot more actively, almost as he went from 30% to rage straight to 70%. Matthew was constantly eating stone Mexican hammers to all levels for the first 7 rounds, answering with light pokes or attempts to clinch. Canelo superseded his opponent in terms of power by multiple levels and capitalized on that by pressing Hatton to the ropes. As it was the case in the past, in the second half of the fight, Saul slowed down a bit and resorted to occasional explosions, which was enough for him to get a crushing victory by points.
Oh, Hatton's game, he's going to make it to the end.
As I said, this is my dreams. This is the first one of many more will come, and I will have more fights with the big names, and I will be one of the big names from Mexico.
Thus, at 20 years of age, Saul Alvarez conquered the belt of one of the major organizations for the first time. There would be more of these titles in the future, but back then it was the first small victory. Becoming the champion, the Mexican didn't waste any time and decided to keep the same frequency of performances. In less than 3 months, he had his first defense against Ryan Rhodes, another British champion of Europe who, like Hatton, hasn't lost in a few years. Rhodes is that type of guy who doesn't allow to fight neither himself nor his opponent. Being light on his feet and having a decent sense of distance, he managed to avoid many dangerous combinations from the champion, while almost not attacking himself, only poking with jabs that Alvarez ate like it was nothing. The Brit couldn't always be untouchable. In the fourth round, Saul knocked him down with a classic combination of a double jab straight. As he got back to his feet, Ryan wasn't that mobile anymore and more often engaged in open exchanges. Such a tactic resulted in Rhodes taking all Canelo's punches to the face in the 12th round, and the referee couldn't let that continue any longer.
Rhodes gets dropped. Referee stops it.
I'm ready to really fight anybody. My managers will tell me who to fight. If I have to fight the devil, I will fight the devil.
Finally, after 2 fights that went to a decision, Alvarez scored a stoppage victory. At that moment, the Mexican's promoter sighed in relief and began to look for another opponent for his second title defense. Soon, the lucky one was found. It happened to be Saul's countryman, a rather decent boxer, Alfonso Gomez. Despite the record of 23-4, the guy boxed really well, and in his time even faced Miguel Cotto for the WBA welterweight title, but, as you might figure, he lost to the Puerto Rican. The leader wasn't clear based on the first minutes. The guys were feeling each other out, measuring the distance, when suddenly Canelo caught his opponent from the left. Gomez got knocked down and soon the round was over.
So Gomez on a left hook. Short. Quick, short left hook. Great punch.
At that moment, it seemed that the fight was going to be a walk in the park for Alvarez. However, all of a sudden, Alfonso managed to turn things around. Thanks to his low stance, he could quickly attack Saul from a long distance, while dodging 80% of incoming strikes. An experienced contender pressured the champion with a barrage of jabs and wasn't inferior in terms of speed, due to which he took 4 consecutive rounds. But it wasn't meant for him to get the victory. In the middle of the bout, Alvarez exploded with an endless combination of hooks and uppercuts and rushed at his opponent. The damage was getting through and Gomez was holding on well. However, the referee called the fight. Not the cleanest stoppage.
Agreed. Town guy, even if he's not from that hometown.
Like I said before, he's a warrior. He's a warrior. He's a good fighter. He's a warrior, and he landed some punches, but they never really hurt me. And I just kept working. I just, took my time and kept working.
This victory of Saul left a somewhat bitter aftertaste, and it was decided to sweeten it up with another title defense, which happened to be a 40th fight in the career of the 21-year-old guy. Canelo's opponent was a mature Kermit Cintron. A couple of years earlier, the Puerto Rican was the welterweight champion and also fought Antonio Margarito himself, though lost via knockout. At the time the fight was put together, the killer was 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Contrary to a couple of Saul's previous opponents, Cintron did not preach the hit-and-run tactic and was ready for mid-range exchanges, which ultimately happened to be his main problem. Alvarez is simply unmatched in such boxing. Thanks to the power, speed and granite chin, he easily grinded Kermit in every exchange, setting up the foundation for a knockout. In the 4th round, the fight became even more vicious, and the Mexican took advantage of the situation, landing 2 terrifying shots from the right. Even a tree would have fallen down from such cannons, so it's only weird that the Puerto Rican managed to get up.
Out of nowhere. He really hurt Cintron.
After such a concussion, he tried to survive in the clinch, but almost went down right at the bell.
Almost another knockdown.
And in the 5th round, he was ultimately crushed with heavy blows.
And he's gotten the best of him totally as this comes to a sudden end.
It was pointless to hold such an asset as Saul on a short leash any longer, and it was decided to quickly set the guy up for big fights. To begin the rise to the top, he was put together against a bit aged but still loved by fans, Sugar Shane Mosley. In the last couple of years, Shane was really unlucky and he was losing a lot more, though his opposition was quite worthy. Floyd Mayweather, Miguel Cotto, Manny Pacquiao. Yes, losing to such monsters is not a shame. However, in those fights it was clear that Mosley wasn't the same anymore. And WBC decided to capitalize on that, putting the veteran against Alvarez.
You know, it's gonna be a great fight. I mean, I'm in great shape. I'm ready to rock and roll. You know, I sound like a broken record. I'm ready. Nah, I'm really ready.
I only want to say that he prepared very well for this fight for Shane Mosley. What can I say about Shane Mosley? Nothing but nice things. He's a great champion. He's accomplished so much in his career, but I've trained hard for this fight. I'm ready for this fight, and I feel I'm going to win this fight, and it's going to be a victory for all of Mexico and from my whole team. Thank you.
In the first round, Shane poked Saul to the point that he couldn't do anything. But beginning from the second one, Alvarez decided to act radically. Fired up Mexican was breaking into the mid-range where he threw hooks and uppercuts to the body while also evading all of the punches of Mosley from the right. Canelo didn't even react to Sugar's jab as he didn't see them as a threat. Overall, the veteran landed more shots, but the advantage in regard to damage was in the champion's favor. From the second half of the fight, Mosley often resorted to clinching, trying to minimize the damage and put the work in himself, but he wasn't very successful in that. As a result, a unanimous decision victory for Alvarez.
Saul Canelo Alvarez.
Yes, whomever, Mayweather, Cotto, Pacquiao, I'm ready.
Shane Mosley was a valuable scalp in Saul's career. Though he was not in his prime, he still had the attention of the fans, and that's how they also were introduced to the rising star from Mexico. The winner didn't rest on his laurels for too long and signed the contract for the fight against Paul Williams 4 months later. However, due to Williams' terrible car accident, this fight was not meant to happen. An alleged opponent for Saul was supposed to be Victor Ortiz, but he suddenly lost to an underdog, Jose Zito Lopez, and now the latter became the main contender.
I understand that I have to fight the best fight of my life to come out with the victory on Saturday, and for that reason I prepared really well. I prepared to the best of my ability.
This is a special moment for me. I remember seeing great fighters fight here and being on this stage, like Mayweather, for example, and I always said to myself, I'm going to be there one day, and this is the time.
In the previous fight, Lopez proved that he could pull off an upset, but one wouldn't necessarily believe in such an outcome in this fight. Canelo tore this guy apart. Only the first 3 minutes were tranquil, and then Alvarez was punishing Jose Zito's body and knocking him down in every round. Every uppercut to the body resembled a shotgun blast, and the contenders inside simply couldn't withstand such a pressure.
Right through his offense. And there he goes again to the body and the right hand. That's tough. With Lopez had just thrown a lot of punches.
After getting down 3 times, Lopez came out in the 5th round being completely exhausted, and the Mexican easily finished him at the ropes.
I want to say that I think that Joseto's a great fighter. He's a great fighter, and I wish him well in his career, the remainder of his career, whatever he decides to do. And again, just thank you very much. It was a very good night. Thank you.
At that moment, people who were interested in Canelo were already having negotiations with Mayweather's party on the matter of their fight, but it wasn't the right time for that yet. So to set up their clash, the guys were put on the same card. Later, Saul refused to be less than a main event and headlined the tournament. His opponent was a technical, undefeated champion, Austin Trout, who defended his WBA title 4 times, and recently the American beat the oldest of Álvarez brothers, Rigoberto, and also Miguel Cotto himself.
So as a fan, I do like watching Canelo. As a fighter, you know, he's not going to hit me with none of that. Yeah. He throws punches, but his feet, he don't have the footwork to contend with me.
And what can I say? The fight's close. It's upon us. The time's close. I can't wait to get into that ring. I prepared very, very well. And I just want to prove. I want to prove that I'm the best, and we'll see who's the best. This Saturday is going to be it's going to be an important fight, but the most important thing is we're ready to prove that we're the best.
As talked about,
a southpaw with decent footwork and a precise jab happened to be a problem for Canelo. At first, the Mexican didn't really figure out how to box against such an opponent. However, beginning from the second round, he realized that there was no point in pressuring Austin and began to work as a counterpuncher. Thus, numerous jabs and big shots from Trout were missing thanks to an amazing head and body movement of Álvarez. The fight was even, but a knockdown made a significant contribution, which Saul scored in the 7th round.
We talked about the momentum of the uppercut in round 6.
A whipping straight made the champion dance and sit on the canvas. After that, the Mexican was holding the advantage for a couple more rounds, and in the conclusion of 12 rounds, the judges unanimously picked him as winner.
Yes, he did it. Álvarez. And if there is any head shaking.
Yes, it was definitely a big motivation for this fight, and finished the fight, he said that was going to be for his brother.
And here is the fight that Canelo has been heading towards for the past few years, the rivalry with Mayweather. By that moment, Floyd had already conquered the welterweight division, and to solidify his legacy, he was moving up in the next category. So the fight with a hyped rookie, who was now holding 2 titles, was no less beneficial for Floyd than for Álvarez. Money's record at that moment was 44-0 and Canelo's 43-0. The headline about the rivalry of 2 undefeated titans of their weight classes helped to quickly sell tickets and draw millions of viewers to the screens. Many of them wanted to see Mayweather's first defeat handed by the Mexican puncher.
The fans, Canelo fans, you guys have stood behind him. He's a true champion. He's a young champion, and he earned his right to be up here with me. And come September 14th, it's the best versus the best. The one.
Everybody knows that Floyd's the best, without question. Vamos a ganar.
During the first minutes of the fight, Álvarez decided to play Floyd's game and work as a technical boxer. However, he wasn't really successful performing in such a style against Mayweather. Money punched in such a way that the Mexican simply couldn't catch him, and Saul himself didn't attack too frequently and missed a lot. As he figured that this tactic doesn't work, in the second half of the fight, Álvarez switched up and went forward in his aggressive style. This made the match a bit more competitive, and Floyd decided to work as second number, but still was a step ahead, dictating the tide of the fight. After 12 rounds, Money was announced as a winner by a majority decision, but frankly speaking, he at least won 8 rounds, and the matter of a draw was completely out of the question. Álvarez was simply not ready for such an opponent.
Yeah, the frustration was getting in there, but simply he's a great fighter, and we were trying to catch him. That's what we were trying to do all day.
An unblemished record was gone, but is it really that bad to lose to the best boxer in the world? I think not. And also, Canelo got the biggest paycheck in his career of $5 million, and more importantly, gained a ton of new fans who were ready to pay for his fights. Taking a break for 1.5 years, Álvarez returned for the fight at a catch weight of 155 pounds, and the opponent was his countryman Alfredo Angulo, who once performed as an interim champion. Angulo was a real human brawl. Every second of the fight he relentlessly moved forward and threw short but powerful shots, depriving Álvarez of space. The former champion was left with nothing to do but accept the phone booth brawl, where soon it was found out that he is a lot better. Canelo's punches caused way more damage, and he also landed more frequently, meeting Alfredo where he was moving forward. Nevertheless, El Perro didn't back down and moved forward like a bulldozer up until the 10th round. In the very beginning, Saul landed a great uppercut, and for some reason the referee decided that it was enough for Angulo. Early stoppage, but Canelo could have easily won even without it.
They have to play their respective roles here. Angulo has to be better.
And the promotion was the return of Canelo. But let me tell you, Canelo's never been gone. He's still here.
As he returned to the winning path, Canelo, in his old tradition, refused to sit on the bench and moved on, while also planning to fight in the same catchweight. The fight Saul was accepted by Erislandy Lara, who, like many countrymen, was famous for his amazing amateur career. He didn't have time to establish himself in the pros and had only 22 fights. The clash with Alvarez happened to be his chance of a lifetime.
The question from Lara came, everybody wants to see the fight. When can you and I fight? And Saúl said, okay, really, everybody wants to see it. Who wants to see it? And there was one over there, here. And he said, oh, isn't that your manager?
Lara led the fight in the exact same style as Austin Trout, while being even more mobile and accepting the back and forth brawling. Most of the time, Canelo was stalking the Cuban and ate jabs with his face, but when Saul ultimately managed to catch his opponent off guard, he mostly punished the body, as Erislandy's head was properly defended. Overall, the fight resembled a regular episode of Tom and Jerry, where a big cat can't keep up with a brisk mouse and constantly gets hit with something to the head. Alvarez had good rounds, but definitely less than the Cuban. However, the judges saw the former champion as the winner via a split decision, and that could be called a robbery.
That was the game plan, to cut off the ring, and while I started doing that a little bit, he started running and running more. When I caught him and cut him with that uppercut, he started moving around and he did more. But I think that I do the strong combinations, the harder punches, and I think that's what ultimately won.
After a controversial, to say the least, victory over Lara, Alvarez suddenly disappeared for a couple of months, and then popped up in the media with the news that he was going to fight James Kirkland. The American had a decent record, but he also never fought for the titles of the major organizations, which was rather strange. What's more interesting is that for a long time this bout didn't have a date, and the reason was the rivalry between Mayweather and Pacquiao. Perhaps Canelo didn't want to fight on Floyd's undercard, and only when the fight between two great boxers was set for May the 2nd of 2015, the clash of Alvarez and Kirkland was put as the main event a week after. Kirkland is a real threat in this division. It's important to beat the strongest fighters.
I want him to smell and understand that I'm here for a dogfight.
James didn't lie in his interview before the fight. He really decided to put on a bloodbath, but it was definitely not in his best interest. Canelo was levels above Kirkland in terms of punching power, and it became clear after a knockdown in the very first round.
Minutes still to go in the first round. Possible opportunity.
Alvarez waited for the perfect moment to smash his opponent's chin with an explosive hook, but even that wasn't enough for the American to turn on his head and stop brawling. He continued to throw punches from the mid-range and even looked good, but in the third round he ate a perfect uppercut.
So there he is. Uppercut knocks Kirkland down, second knockdown of the fight.
Surviving another knockdown, James wanted to return the favor, but instead got knocked out cold with a hook.
There's a perfect straight right hand, and Shirley's gonna stop the fight. What a performance by Canelo Alvarez. Maybe all things considered, the most...
Kirkland is a great fighter. We knew he was going to come in and throw punches. At the beginning, we were both a little exhausted, but I knew what happened. I knew we would win the fight.
After his loss, Saul had 3 fights, and in the eyes of Mauricio Suleiman, it was enough to give him another title opportunity, even though all last performances of the Mexican were at the catch weight. Of course, Canelo could contest only the WBC title, and that time it was held by the legendary Miguel Cotto, who after his loss to Floyd and Trout, like Saul, won 3 fights. If that bout took place 3 to 4 years earlier, one could bet a house on Cotto. But now, the situation changed significantly, and not in the favor of the boxer from the Island of Champions.
How do you feel about representing Mexico in this fight?
I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud. I feel honored to fight for my country, and with all that pride, I'm going to represent my country with that amount of pride.
All I have to say is that I'm ready for the fight. I know Canelo and his team is ready too, and let's get this fight what the fans need from us. Thank you.
What a beautiful and eventful fight. Instead of a blend brawling that many of Canelo's opponents counted on, Cotto acted technically, putting in a lot of work with the lead hand and to the body. On top of that, the boxers were close in terms of power and speed, which made their virtuous exchanges of combinations look even more exciting. Miguel had a number of good moments, especially in the first half of the fight. However, oftentimes Alvarez stalled around with a couple of big shots, and he was especially successful with landing a long punch from the right and a vicious uppercut to the liver. In the end, the Mexican looked a lot better as Cotto significantly slowed down. Alvarez took the victory by a unanimous decision. However, crushing scorecards from the judges raised some questions.
Saul Canelo
You know, like I said, my respect for him. And what I said, it doesn't matter if I landed 10 punches, but 10 well-connected punches.
The win over Cotto was an easy one, but quite deserved. And thanks to that, Canelo finally conquered the WBC middleweight championship once again, though he still fought at a catch weight. Well, while one could somewhat comprehend that, the first title defense against Amir Khan, who moved up, which was also supposed to be held outside of the category's weight limit, was a lot harder to justify. It's not even clear how Khan agreed to that. Although a potential victory over a star of such a level could quickly return the Brit to once lost positions, one could understand his motivation. Inside a boxing ring, nothing is easy. There's no easy opponent. You don't know what's going to happen. Any rival is difficult. I see Khan as a tough rival. I'm going to prepare 100% because I know what he brings. And of course, I have a lot to lose.
I'm a big fan of Canelo. I think he's a great fighter. He's young and he's explosive and he's powerful. But then, you know, it's my time to show how good I am. Being the underdog is only gonna drive me even harder.
Like any other fast boxer, Amir caused so many problems for Canelo that the Mexican couldn't catch him for 6 rounds. However, when it finally happened, one single shot was enough to instantly dispatch Khan.
Canelo drops Amir Khan. A big shot landed by the Mexican fighter.
You know, many people focus on my power and talk about my power, but I've got many more qualities in the ring, and people see that, and that's what happened in the ring.
At last, after 2 years of performing at a catch weight, Alvarez finally became the super welterweight boxer and planned to take another belt. Alvarez's sight fell on the WBO title, which belonged to an undefeated Brit, Liam Smith. Throughout his career, Beefy had 23 fights, defending the belt twice, and both of the wins were via knockout. A really tough opponent with whom Saul could show his true level. Maybe Angulo and Kirkland are only strong fighters, but he is more dangerous because he is strong and he thinks. I like changes, I like to continue, I want to make history in this sport. I'm hungry for victory.
I respect him, I do respect what he's done for Mexico, I respect him as a man, I respect him as a fighter for getting in the ring. But I won't show him no respect on September 17th.
Everything looked like the guys were copying each other's style. Each of them went forward with a high guard and tried to press the opponent to the ropes to later unload with long combinations. The initiative switched hands from round to round, and the only difference between the guys was the positioning of their hands in defense. Saul leaned heavily, covering not only his head but also the body, while Liam often went ahead, protecting only his chin. Such an impudence in a fight with the master of destroying the liver is unforgiving. Canelo took advantage of the situation and smashed the Brit's body for 7 rounds, scoring the first knockdown.
Oh, and a big body shot, and down goes Liam Smith for the first time in his professional career!
The situation repeated itself in the next round, and in the 9th one, Smith ate another hard shot, curled on the ground, and couldn't get up. A clean knockout to the liver.
It's over! Canelo Alvarez!
I told you I was going to give you a great fight and bring you the championship, and here it is.
As he obtained the precious belt, Canelo expressed his desire to fight Gennady Golovkin, an undefeated welterweight champion from Kazakhstan. However, to get that, being a super welterweight, he needed to have at least one performance at a new weight class, and for that fight was picked Saul's countryman, the son of the great Julio Cesar Chavez, Chavez Jr. For the longest time, the guy was on a diet of low-quality boxers, almost made it to 50-0, but when it was time to increase the level of opposition, the guy didn't justify the expectations, and it was decided to get rid of him in the fight with Álvarez. And Canelo's party did everything possible to play safe. They signed the contract with a mandatory rematch clause in case of Saul's loss, and also the weight was set by the Champions Party, which threatened Chavez Jr. with $1 million pay for every pound over the weight limit. Oh, what can I say? He never represented Mexico. He was never a dignified representative of Mexico. He was on the path to become one, but he reached a point where he couldn't give any more, and that's why he simply wasn't.
He need to take a risk because the people demand, this kind of fights like Triple G, like fight me, another weight class. He moved 10 pounds, I accept and he's take the challenge, but in the past, it's not me, the people criticize him because don't fight.
The Mexican derby at an iconic arena in Vegas sounds really cool, as if we went back to the 2000s. Unfortunately, the fight was exciting only on paper, and in reality, 20,000 viewers watched how Chavez Jr. was bullied around the ring for 36 minutes. As he was afraid to gas out or miss an unnecessary shot, Julio constantly retreated and ate short strikes of Saul with his guard, and rare moments of its activity were abrupted with long combinations from the champion. Any competitiveness was completely out of the question, and in the end, judges gave fair scorecards of 120 to 108 in favor of Álvarez.
No, I'm very happy. I'm very proud. Look, 2 Mexicans doing what we did tonight. The people should be proud for what we did, and I'm very happy, and I'm going to continue giving the fans and giving you all big and great fights.
It's about time to talk about one of the most important fights in Saul's career, or as they call it, robbery of the century. But first things first, after an easy victory over Chavez, Canelo immediately stated that he will fight Gennady Golovkin to take 3 belts that the Kazakh held for a long time. Despite the talks about this fight, the date wasn't announced for quite a while, and there were negotiations behind the curtains about the weight and rematch clauses. In the end, the parties decided that there wouldn't be a rehydration clause, and both fighters would gain as much pounds as they needed to, while in case of Saul's loss, he was promised an immediate rematch. The fight was set for September the 16th.
And you know me, I don't like to talk a lot. I just want to say that I'm prepared
but I mean, I know what it's going to be. It's going to be a tough fight. I know that.
Alvarez chose an absolutely unusual tactic. Instead of pressure, he retreated and countered Golovkin when he was getting too close. I might guess that first of all the reasons for such changes in the style was a fear to get hit with legendary Kazakh punches, as Gennady was seen as an even more terrifying knockout artist than the Mexican himself. Speaking about the efficiency of Canelo in this fight, it wasn't at its peak. Triple G had enough head movement to minimize the counters, and in the middle of the fight, a hard shot from the right was landing on Saul's head more and more. The only benefit for Alvarez in changing his strategy happened to be endurance, which was enough for him to take a couple of rounds in the end. However, he was quite far from winning. But what did the judges see? 115 to 113 for Golovkin, 114 to 114, and a legendary scorecard of Adelaide Bird, 118 to 110 for Alvarez. Absolutely nonsense, which however allowed Saul to avoid another defeat, as the final result was a draw.
This is officially a draw.
Well, there is a stunning outcome.
It's terrible. For me, it's terrible, you know, just... This is not correct, you know, this is very bad for sport.
It seemed like there were talks about the rematch before boxers even left the ring, and the Mexicans team was the most interested in that. In the meantime, people were speaking out. All the media discussed one of the biggest robberies of recent years, and what else can be said when even the broadcast team was shocked by Adelaide Bird's scorecard.
And see 10 rounds for Canelo Alvarez. That scorecard submitted by Adelaide Bird is one of the biggest embarrassments that I've seen.
It's difficult to fathom.
Bosses of WBC knew that Canelo can't lose this fight, so he was literally dragged from the swamp and given an opportunity to try one more time, but a thunderclap from where it was least expected. Alvarez had 2 positive tests for banned substances, after which he was given the shortest possible disqualification period of 6 months. After his return, Alvarez was definitely ready to have a rematch, and the second fight between him and Golovkin was set for September the 15th, almost on the same day as their bout. In recent times, Saul made a lot of mistakes and could have apologized to his fans at least for doping, but instead, he put on a showdown with Golovkin's coach.
Primero que nada quiero decir, también mentiste a tus fans. Dijiste que me ibas a noquear en 6 rounds.
First off, I want to start by saying you also lied to your fans because you said that he would knock me out under 6 rounds. What happened there?
Muy difícil. It's impossible to knock somebody out when he fights the fight not to be knocked out. When you run, it's impossible to catch anybody.
Les prometiste a tus
You
fans.
promised your fans that he would knock me out.
You promised us also you were going to fight the knock Golovkin out in 10.
This time Canelo went for a completely different fight tactic. He wasn't afraid of pressure anymore and actively moved forward, working a lot with the jab and not forgetting to focus on the body. He showed a lot more aggression and activity this time, and thanks to that, Alvarez 100% took the first rounds. Beginning from the middle of the fight, there were even exchanges. Saul was winning the start of the rounds, while the ending was in favor of fresher Gennady, so it was quite challenging to score such moments. At the end of the fight, Triple G became more active, and Alvarez didn't allow himself to get pressed at the ropes and fought back with 2 or 3 punches. A rather close and competitive fight, which at a first glance could be given to Golovkin with a slight edge. However, 2 judges saw Canelo as the winner, while the third one scored a draw. The Mexican won via majority decision.
No, that's what I did. I promised people I would go out to look for a knockout, but it's very difficult at this stage. He's a great fighter, but we tried to do it. But at the end, obviously, I got the victory. We got the victory. We took this victory for Mexico.
Going through 2 toughest fights in his life, Canelo became the champion in 3 organizations, but almost immediately after that, he announced that he was going to move up in weight and transition to the super middleweight division. it appeared that Alvarez was looking to set records, including the number of conquered belts, or he just simply got tired of cutting weight. The champion wasn't given any easy fights in the new division and was instantly set for WBA title bout against not the most promoted Brit, Rocky Fielding, with a record of 27-1.
I know who he is. I've trained very hard. I know the challenge I have in front of me.
To be honest, when I said about easy fights, I lied, because Rocky wasn't a match for Canelo. Height and skinny build happened to be a real problem for Fielding, as Alvarez did not spare him and butchered the body so much that it trembled the walls of the arena. Just a couple of shots to the liver and the Mexican put the opponent on his knees.
One body shot, and he takes a knee.
When Rocky got up, he didn't even know that the same fate was awaiting him also in the second round, where Canelo scored a knockdown at the very end.
Body shot, and he is being chopped down.
With a score of 20-16 after 2 rounds, the Brit had a dynamic start of the third round, but his rush quickly went off. The Mexican Dragon incinerated his victim with tearing shots to the body, scoring a knockout.
Hard right hand, down he goes. Fielding looks back in his corner. Jamie Moore.
That was the plan we had, to hurt the body, and he committed the error by beginning to exchange with me. But that's what we worked on, to hit hard to the body, and thank God everything went well.
As he tested the waters and earned a spectacular win via knockout, Canelo came back home, where he was conveniently set to have a unification bout with Daniel Jacobs. The thing was that prior to the rematch with Alvarez, Golovkin was stripped of IBF title for a refusal of a mandatory defense, and soon it was put up for grabs between the main contenders. The Ukrainian Sergey Derevinchenko and Jacobs, whose most significant achievement was 12 rounds with Golovkin. Daniel won by a decision and took on a role of the last infinity stone that Saul was missing to be called the best middleweight.
This is the opportunity of a lifetime for me, and I'm mostly excited to get in there to show the world that I am the best middleweight of my generation. I've been saying it all the while, but now I finally have an opportunity to prove it.
In boxing, anything could happen. That's including the knockout. If it's there, trust me, I'm going to take it and I'm going to go for the knockout. I've never given a... I don't care. I don't care if he's bigger, he's stronger, or he's smaller. That's never bothered me. I have the capability, I have the experience to overcome that and more.
Daniel took advantage of Canelo's weak sides, which included high speed and a decent jab of the opponent. However, he was lacking agility. The Mexican repeatedly punished his opponent with 2-3 shots in the first half of the bout. Despite the advantage in size, Jacobs didn't have enough skills and strength to not let Alvarez get close to him, and he ate a lot. However, then he became infuriated and began to attack the champion with combinations to different levels. A couple of times, the Mexican was caught off guard, after which he tried to pay back, but not always successfully though. Daniel's onslaught in the later rounds was not enough for the victory, and Saul rightfully added another belt to his vault. Despite a clear desire to collect all the middleweight belts on September the 13th of 2019, Canelo suddenly announced that he is moving up not 1 but 2 weight classes to face the WBO champion Sergey Kovalev. Such a decision from Alvarez could be easily justified that his party didn't see a serious threat in an aged Russian and could effortlessly conquer another title. Once, the Crusher was a nightmare in the light heavyweight division and was on a 31-fight winning streak. But then he was robbed in the fight with Ward, and then the Son of God knocked Sergey out in the rematch. After that, there was another loss followed by 2 victories, and then came the time to face Canelo.
And I'm ready. I'm ready to make history. I'm ready for this great fight with Kovalev. Ready to make history here.
Surprisingly, Saul did not pale in front of Kovalev, at least in terms of size and power.
We're obviously very happy. We're very happy with the results. We are 4 times division title holders now. It was a hard fight. It was more hard than we thought. And we are here. We are here and we have won.
For 2 dominant victories in 2019, Saul was named the Boxer of the Year, and overall, he was finally getting the status he was led to through his entire life. However, every barrel of honey has a drop of tar, and it happened to be contract cancellation with Golden Boy Promotions due to agreement violation. Parting with Oscar De La Hoya and his people took place in November, and by December, Canelo already had an upcoming fight with a British super middleweight champion in 2 organizations, Callum Smith, with a record of 27-0. As you can see, Canelo was not really in a hurry to return to his weight and fight, for instance, Charlo. Instead, he decided to collect a couple more titles.
I've watched Canelo over the years, and as a fan I enjoy watching him, but I've always watched him believing if that was me in there, I believe I can beat him. I've always felt stylistically I've got the style to do it, and I've got a chance to prove it.
Yes, I like risk. I like taking risk. Taking this fight is a risk. I'm fighting the #1 at the 168 pounds, so these are challenges for me, and I continue to bring challenges forward, and I like the risk of it. I like challenges to continue making history.
It's not one of those fights you would want to re-watch. For all 12 rounds, the guys were bouncing around the ring, avoided danger, and poked at each other with jabs. At the start, Canelo was rarely utilizing power punches, but the further the fight went, the more aggressive the Mexican became. In the 9th round, he even stunned Smith, but didn't develop his success, and the bout ended with a unanimous decision in his favor.
As I said, I adapt to all styles. I adapted for Callum Smith this time around, and I'll prepare for any style. I will always prepare for any style, and I'll be ready. I'll always be ready and be the winner.
Canelo decided to abandon the middleweight division and settle down in this weight class. The management accommodated him and quickly found him an opponent for an easy first title defense. Among a big range of contenders, the chance was given to the Turkish boxer Avni Yildirim, who had a controversial loss to Anthony Dirrell in his last fight. Objectively, the Turkish was the weakest top 15 fighter in the super middleweight division, so he simply wasn't given any chances against Saul. Not to be rude to Yildirim, but even a punching bag in the gym would have offered Canelo better opposition than he was. The Mexican literally boxed as he wanted to, peppering his opponent with signature short uppercuts and hooks through the block. Avni was catching everything with his face, while Saul easily parried his punches, after which he initiated another attack. In the 3rd round, the beatdown reached its peak when Alvarez put his opponent down with 1-2.
Oh, there it is, a right hand that is just devastating. Yildirim comes up smiling, says that.
After that, the champion battered the poor guy so badly that he refused to continue.
Wolf and punish him. Yildirim trying to stay sturdy, trying to keep his foundation. Just the quickness matched with the power of Canelo at the forefront and on firm display. Yildirim.
I'm gonna give you one more round at me. If I don't see
he's got some trouble, and John Diaz knows it.
You gotta show me something. I'm here to take care of you. How you feel? How are you?
It is done. He came in as a one-man.
Already by the moment when Alvarez stayed in this weight class for the sake of the fight with an unknown Turkish, it was clear that sooner or later he would want to become the undisputed super middleweight champion, as he couldn't achieve that status prior. Just 2 weeks later, the rumors were proven right. announcement of the unification bout between Canelo and a seasoned British boxer, Billy Joe Saunders, who held the WBO belt and hasn't lost a fight in his career. Such an opponent was very formidable compared to Avni Yildirim. However, Saul was still a big favorite coming into this fight.
I've been involved in a lot of big fights, and this is just another day at the office. I come to win, and like I said, boxing is my life, and I come here to win.
At the end of the day, you know, the Mexican people half like him, half don't, so hopefully the half that don't like him will be supporting the old gypsy boy.
For this fight, Saunders' team managed figured that Saul's shot broke the guy's orbital and he can't continue.
And it is over! They have stopped the fight! They have stopped the fight!
The fight was over, and not only did Alvarez earn a second stoppage victory, but also snatched the third title.
They have to wait their turn, fighters. Responding to Eddie Reynos's comments on whether or not they should move up a division, they can wait their turn. We beat Smith, he was a champion. We also beat Saunders, who was a champion at 168 and 160. We're going for Plant. They want to see him lose, and that's why they want to see him fight heavier fighters and fighters in other divisions.
In total, Canelo had 4 fights in the super middleweight division, and that was enough for him to take 3 out of 4 main belts and also get to the top of the pound-for-pound rankings. To finish his conquest in the weight class, he was missing only 1 IBF title, which he went on to conquer right after his fight with Billy Joe Saunders. At that time, the coveted belt belonged to the undefeated fan favorite, Caleb Plant. Saul had a fight with Saunders in May, and already by the fall, there was a fight agreement with Sweet Hands. The most vivid moment prior to the fight was a short, but a significant brawl at the stare down. Caleb was incredibly fast, and Saul couldn't properly land to his head and got hit with a lot of jabs. Acknowledging that the fight slowly slips into the hands of the opponent, already in the 3rd round, Alvarez changed levels and began to punish the body. Sweet Hands was never famous for his cardio, and with a damaged liver, he gassed out even faster, due to which the Mexican snatched the initiative after the middle of the fight. Now he could catch and hammer the IBF champion. Figuring that the opponent doesn't present any threats, in the 11th round, Alvarez stepped on the gas to the medal super middleweight champion.
Saul Canelo!
No, definitely my respect for Caleb Plant. He's a very difficult fighter. He has a lot of ability. I do respect the fight.
Saul became the face of the division, at least officially. Overall, he had a lot of work to do in the weight class. Take at least David Benavidez with a beautiful winning streak, but in his good old tradition, instead of defending the belts, Alvarez decided to jump up a weight class and conquer another title. Initially, he intended to go in cruiserweight, but later Saul's team thought that an easy target would be a decision machine from Russia, Dmitry Bivol, who held the WBA light heavyweight title. Back then, the majority of the fans considered this fight a typical mismatch.
He have a lot of skills, a lot of experience in amateur. He's a solid champion in 175, but I know, and I'm ready. I believe in my skills, and I'm very confident with how strong I am.
It seemed like Alvarez
So it was the same question, and the answer was yes, we want it, and we want the rematch, and we're going to do much better in the rematch.
All parties were for the rematch, but suddenly Canelo took the other, more easy way. Instead of the second fight with Bivol, Alvarez decided to put to rest his rivalry with Gennady Golovkin, having a third and final fight in the super middleweight division. Since losing to the Mexican, Triple G hasn't slipped and returned 2 titles in his weight class, However, for such an important fight, he decided to move up for the first time in his career. Considering that at the time of the fight, Gennady was already 40 years old, it was his last chance to pay Canelo back.
It's gonna be difficult, but that's what I want, and that's what I want to accomplish Saturday night.
This time it wasn't as competitive as it was in the past. Canelo worked in his usual style and easily won the first rounds, as Gennady barely attacked in return. At one point, Saul most likely thought that this would be a walk in the park and not an actual fight. However, then a 40-year-old veteran suddenly became 2 times faster and active. Golovkin's shots landed more precisely and frequently, and his passiveness switched to aggressive pressure and cold-blooded confidence. A one-sided fight quickly turned into a competitive clash where Triple G won almost all of the final rounds. Nevertheless, Saul did more at the beginning, so the judges unanimously picked him as the winner.
Champion of the world, Saul Canelo Alvarez.
No, he's a really good fighter. I know he's strong. He's a great fighter, and that's why we are here, right? And I'm glad to share the ring with him.
A great story came to an end, and with it perhaps the career of Gennady Golovkin. And many fans began to seriously argue that Saul also passed his prime. Besides losing to Bivol, he looked rather bad in the last rounds against Triple G, and that made people think that the Mexican star was heading towards the sunset. To test that with another title defense in the super middleweight division, Alvarez was put against a tough but not very ambitious John Ryder, who was on a streak of 4 victories. The place of the fight happened to be Mexico, where Saul returned to fight for the first time in 11 years. Southpaw Ryder absolutely couldn't force his game on the champion. Canelo stalked him and landed occasionally, but with big power. Alvarez broke his opponent's nose already in the first minutes and continued to hurt him till the very end of the clash. He couldn't finish Tough Gorilla, but Saul didn't get hit with much either. Not the most spectacular, but still a dominant performance on home soil. Initially, after beating John Ryder, Canelo was planning to move up in 1 or even 2 weight classes. The champion still had the idea to have a rematch with Bivol, but the plans suddenly changed and Alvarez's team announced that they are staying in the super middleweight division for the fight with Charlo. Everybody immediately thought that it was the middleweight champion Jermall Charlo, but for some reason, Alvarez's next opponent would be the undisputed super middleweight champion Jermall Charlo. For this fight, the line moves up 2 weight classes and it will be quite challenging for him. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but it seems like Canelo will have another defense of the undisputed champion status. From the very beginning, there were big bets on Canelo. His open fighting style, love for putting on a show, and the heart of a true Mexican were supposed to make the guy a superstar. And now, after years past, we can say that his plan succeeded. His story has a couple of black spots that will leave a mark on his legacy, but he also did enough to be considered one of the best boxers of the end of the 2010s and the beginning of the 2020s. So let's just applaud his achievements and admit that Saul Canelo Alvarez is a great fighter.